asked, would you, he was either indirectly asked, or he started talking about this question of would he release his delegates from having to vote for him on the first ballot, which of course they're pledged to do, but there is a Democratic bylaw that they don't necessarily have to if they have great concerns. And he seemed to, as he did with the letter to begin the week, say, go for it, sure, if you want. Which,
yeah, go ahead and make my day.
Right.
Yeah, and I was talking to a high-ranking Democrat today about that very rule, the good conscience rule, and whether delegates really are free to vote. And I think that is a matter of dispute. Right now, there are almost 4,000 delegates that are bound to Joe Biden on the first ballot. Truly, without there being legal challenges, he would have to actually formally release the delegates. And that is not a step that his campaign is talking about in any way, shape, or form. They are trying to somehow power through this, keep moving forward, as Biden said, to get to a point where they can, it is an infomercial that they want to have. But right now, all it is basically Democrats in disarray. And somehow between now and a month from now, they either need to figure out how to coalesce behind their nominee or figure out a way to very quickly run a flash primary where the only people voting would be the delegates at the convention.
Michelle Kellerman, I want to come back to you here. One of the things that jumped out to me in listening to President Biden this evening was a response he made to a reporter where he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he's not hearing his European allies, European leaders coming up to him and saying, Joe, don't run. They're telling him, he says, you've got to win. So I want to ask you, Michelle, is that what you're hearing, or what are you hearing from European sources? Are they concerned about this president's ability to win a second term?
Yeah, I think that's top of mind for build frayed alliances after the Trump administration. And I think, particularly NATO countries, a lot of them were traumatized by the Trump administration, and they're very worried that it's going to come back again. So I thought that was interesting, too, that he said that people aren't telling him privately, don't run, but you got to win. But there is a lot of concern about how he's going to win. He talks about that the U.S. is an indispensable nation, our leadership matters, our partnership matters, this moment matters. And I think, European leaders can agree on that. But, whether he's the one who's going to be able to defeat Trump this time around is a different story.
And you're listening to live special coverage from NPR News. Tamara Keith, I'm going to go for you on this. Moments ago, you and I were talking about what comes next. Do more lawmakers come forward asking Biden to leave the race now that the summit is done? Since we talked about that, we have a tweet from Jim Himes, the president is secure. He must not risk that legacy, those accomplishments, and American democracy to soldier it on the fact of the horrors promised by Donald Trump. He goes on and basically, this is a very long way of the way that we have seen many House Democrats come out and ask Biden to step aside, saying, you are a great president, you've accomplished many things, please step aside.
Right. And I think that what you also hear in all of these statements is this absolute fear from Democrats about the stakes in this election. If it weren't Donald Trump, they may not be so concerned, but it is Donald Trump. And they are they believe what they are saying, that democracy is on the line in this election. They believe what President Biden is saying, which is that he believes democracy is on the line in this election. And many Democrats are concerned that Biden staying in is NBC News, a lengthy sit down with anchor Lester Holt. And there will be one test after another, of whether he can do this.
We've spent a lot of time talking about the politics here, but in his remarks and his answers to reporters, President Biden spent much of this news conference trying to refocus all of us on the issues. Let's take a listen.
Don't reduce this to the usual testing that people talk about, the issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come.
Rebecca and Tam, you have covered the White House, you have covered the campaign. I'm hoping you can both talk to us a little bit about how salient these issues are and the case that the president made tonight and how effective it is.
Well, I can tell you that foreign policy doesn't usually decide elections. It is very rare for foreign policy to decide elections. That is not the kind of kitchen table issue that people are driven by. Just ask.
Everybody stopped campaigning due to COVID. And a lot of people took that to mean, I want to Donald Trump would serve one term. She asked him what had changed since he made that statement.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited.
And Biden went on to talk about, COVID, the economy, the big four policy challenges that he's faced. But I think the gravity of the situation, Tam, is why a lot of Democrats in Congress and around the country, Democratic officials, are worried about what happens if Biden loses because of the stakes of what happens if Donald Trump gets back in power.
Absolutely. And, anyone who can become president is someone who wakes up in the morning and believes that they are the one, that they are the only one who can do it. And certainly that is the case with President Biden. He is someone who throughout his career has been knocked down, pounded out, saying, well, I just need to finish the job. Like, if the job had been easy, I could have done it in one term, but I just have to finish the job. There's too much to do. There's too much at stake. But of course, many Democrats are arguing, hey, your legacy is pretty strong. You passed a lot of legislation that nobody thought you could do. Why not build that bridge that you mentioned?
The other thing that I found really interesting was hearing him defend his age as an event being a detriment to him, as there have been so much attention focused on his fitness for office, whether he can do the job, whether he got a question at the end about whether there should be some sort of cognitive test for him. So I thought that was really interesting hearing him talk about that as well.
Yeah, he's dealt with his age a couple of ways, joking and saying, I look 40, or saying that age brings you wisdom.
That is, we've been listening again to President Biden. Spoke for about nearly an hour tonight.
Kaya hindi mo muna